So yesterday, Zenless Zone Zero released its new endgame mode called Deadly Assault. I don't know where it actually says Deadly Assault here, but that's its name. And what it is kind of like a boss rush mode. It's not really like a boss rush, but it's a mode where you have to defeat 3 bosses. And based on how much damage you do and how you like utilize the buffs that it gives you, which to be honest is kind of stacked in favor of the newest characters, which it always will be for a gacha game, so that's no surprise. But I was mildly surprised by how much like actual new content there is in this mode. If you look at this boss here, it looks very similar to the boss that you fight at the end of chapter 3, I believe, for Zenless, which is the ballerina boss. But this one is actually quite different. It has new abilities. There's only one version of it, and it spawns like little smaller versions that you have to destroy so that you get buffs to defeat it. So there are actually new abilities for this boss, and I actually think the model is entirely different. Obviously, it's based on the model that was there before in the second or third chapter at the very end. But it's a tiny bit different. It's obviously based on it, but the model itself is different. And then you have the newest boss bringer, and I believe that these 2 bosses actually also have new abilities, or at least it seemed to me that they were using abilities that were not as familiar to me. Or maybe that's just because I was like more focused on it. And so it's kind of like a time trial where you have to do as much damage as you can possibly do within that time, which sounds really bad. But it's a bit more lenient than it actually seems. As you can see here, I have 3 stars here, 2 stars here, and 1 star here out of 3. 1 out of 3 stars, 2 out of 3 stars, and 3 out of 3 stars. And you actually only need 6 stars to complete this mode and get all of the Primo Gem rewards. Okay, if you don't play Genshin, it's polychromes. I always forget there's people who don't play Genshin and like actually watch my videos. So essentially, yeah, you okay, can you focus? Fuck, my phone sucks. But basically, this is no longer polychromes. There's only polychromes up to the 6-star reward. So you only need to get only need to get 6 stars in total out of these 3 bosses. If you're good enough, if you do enough damage, then you can just do 2 bosses. So you only need 2 teams. But I think for the most part, people who are not whales are only going to be able to get up to maybe like 2 or 3 stars for one of these bosses, and then you're going to want to get 2 stars or 1 star in these other bosses because they have elemental weaknesses, right? So this one is weak to ice and ether. So you either want Ellen Jo, Zhu Yun, which is the only ether character so far, or you want Miyabi. But this one actually has buffs for Miyabi specifically. So you're going to want Miyabi on this boss so you can get 3 stars. Unfortunately, I don't have Miyabi on this account. I have it on my free-to-play account, but this is my whale account. So I don't have Miyabi, so I just used an anomaly team. And as you can see, I couldn't get even 2 stars on this one because it didn't have the buff and elemental specific weakness buff. So I got 2 stars here. And even here, I didn't really have the elemental weakness buff. You can see an enemy weakness fire. I have that for lighter, but I had to depend on my Nekomata, which is somewhat cracked because I have her at 1 copy and 1 copy of her signature weapon. So she's not like the worst thing of all time. I also have my Caesar King buffing her. So she's actually pretty cracked here. And I was able to eke out, what was it? Performance points damage score? 14,492 score, which is above 1400, giving me 2 stars. And you have to go to 20,000 to get all 3 stars, which I was able to do with my meta team here with Ellen Jo and Lycon and what's her name? Sokaku, as well as her specific bamboo. I think I have 2 copies of this as well, so this is a little bit better than it seems. I don't know how much the bamboos actually contribute, but I've been trying to get multiple copies of bamboos at this point. So basically what I'm trying to say is that this mode is surprisingly fun because the bosses actually do a surprising amount of damage. So you can't just do willy-nilly not dodge anything. They still have the flashing indicators. This is not like Battle Tower. But it's just fun. It's fun to fight these bosses that do decent amounts of damage. It feels good to optimize my rotations so that they do the maximum amount of damage. For example, for this boss, because I didn't have the elemental weakness, right? I had to actually like ration my ultimates to make use of like this buff, right? This buff gives me more buffs as I use my ultimates. Upon launching an ultimate, agent attack increases by an additional 15%. So I had to like ration my ultimates so that when my Nekomata is going to do damage, I had to use one of these other ultimates, and then she gets another buff, and then she does her ultimate, and then it's like it resets. It's really fun, and that's all there is to it. It's like there are people I've seen on Reddit, on Twitter, complaining about the fact that this is kind of what would you call it? A damage check, a character check, and it is a damage check. It is a character check. It checks whether or not you have the characters, whether or not you have a level of the characters, whether or not you have your signature weapons. But it is also a skill check at the same time. I've seen people do it with just A rank characters. I'm not saying that they don't have cracked artifacts or relics or whatever they're calling in this game. Discs, essentially. I always forget disc. Disc just doesn't roll off the tongue. I'm ranting at this point, but it's fun. Like, that's all there is to it. And yes, it is a damage check. But here's the thing. Here's the thing you always have to remind yourself. The only thing worse than a damage check and being cockblocked by not having characters and not having the relics and not having the discs or the weapons is having nothing to strive for. You need something to strive for in these games for them to give you purpose, for you to want to pull for new characters. And if you don't want to pull for new characters in a gacha game, then it's kind of like, why are you playing a gacha game? That is the rationality, that is the consensus for that I have come to in my mind after playing gacha games for the last 4 and a bit more years. Once I stopped wanting to pull for characters in Genshin Impact, I stopped wanting to play the game. And now that I have a reason to pull for more characters in Genshin as well as this game, I'm having more fun. So this is Bench Gamer signing out, and I hope you guys are having fun in Genshin Zenless as well. Honkai Star Rail needs to do something to, like, actually, Honkai Star is actually doing a bit better now because they have a bit more like non-combat focused content now with the last patch, with the new room that we got. It shows off some of the stuff that we got in our previous adventures and previous regions. So they're actually doing pretty well in that regard. But the thing that I want to see for Honkai Star is to just like focus a bit more on the story and just like hone in like on a couple of factors, a couple of story elements, and just hone in on those story elements instead of going all over the place with different characters. If that makes any sense. I want to see them like proportion the story more for each character and tie them up together in a more neat way. Like Zenless Zone Zero is definitely not perfect in that regard, but I think they did it a little bit better, a little bit more succinctly. Whereas Honkai Star Rail, I don't know. Honkai Star Rail's Penacony kind of just fell apart in maybe the epilogue, in the last third of the story, in my opinion. And they can do that a little bit better. To be honest, Honkai Star Rail, like if they had just put in the Fugue and Sunday epilogue at the very end of the story instead of giving it to us 3 patches later, it would have been almost a perfect ending, in my opinion. So maybe it's just the fact that this is a live service game and everything is fucked up because of the schedule. This has been Screamer signing out. I've ranted enough. I'll see you guys later. Bye.